Right. Well, and in a lot of cases, he's firing the people. And so then they have to go through the judicial system to say, was it legal to fire me?
Right. So it's
And in a
better to
lot
be
of
fired
cases,
and then
right,
have a court case about it than to resign and just to give up,
right. And
right?
in several cases, the judiciary has said, no, you cannot fire this person, reinstate them.
Yeah.
And so, and in with regard to not only leadership within these departments, but also some of the general personnel, right? People on
Hmm.
provisional
Yes.
personnel. So I think there's about
Right.
6 or so departments where they have been told rehire these people.
Right.
And so, and that's the judiciary that has made that happen. Welcome to another episode of the Bloomburg Democrat. I'm Sally Taylor. This is my astonishingly smart younger brother, John Daniels. He always has interesting things to add to conversations. John, I wanted to talk about today whether or not the judiciary is going to sort of be the savior of America
Mhm.
by standing up against Trump's sort of most egregious, vicious policies and executive orders.
Mhm.
And I have a little bit of tentative hope that that might be the case,
Yeah.
because with all of these lawsuits that are coming forward as he takes all of these unusual, seemingly, I'll just say un-American
Mm.
actions,
Yeah.
the courts do seem to be at least attempting to rein him in a little.
Yeah. You think
Um,
the checks and balances are going to check some balance?
I hope. Well, because Congress has already kind of caved in. The
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Republican Party has given up. And I say
Yeah.
the Republican Party, I don't really, I like struggle to call them Republicans anymore
Yeah.
because
No.
they're not
Yeah.
behaving like the traditional
Right.
Republicans that we grew up with.
Yeah. Essentially, I think the party has kind of disintegrated and it's really changed into something else.
It is
They keep the
something
name
else.
simply because we have a two-party system,
Right.
but yeah, no, it's much more like Tea Partiers or something, right?
Well,
Or I don't
yeah. I
know.
mean, I think to call it MAGA right now is the
Yeah.
MAGA party
That's probably the
is more
party. Yeah.
accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's nothing like, it's not conservative for one.
Yeah. Right.
There's no conservatism that I can see
Right. They're not trying to
in,
preserve something, really.
no. Right,
We've
right, right.
always had a Department of Education, I think, haven't we?
Well,
For
since
quite some time.
it's been about 45 years.
Oh, has it only been
Uh,
45 years?
yeah. So I
Well,
believe
basically
that
right when I
was
was born.
put into place by Jimmy Carter in the
Okay.
70s. Yeah.
Well, good job, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
He's my favorite president, really.
I mean,
He's the only one
he,
who hasn't like led us into wars or bombed a bunch of people and stuff. I mean,
right. He was a good man.
yeah.
Being a good man doesn't necessarily make you an effective president, is the problem.
I
So
think
he is
he
my
was pretty
favorite with
effective.
regard to how well there was a lot of things that went on in the 70s that,
Yeah, it was before my
it
time, so
he
I
was a
can't say, but
one-term president, let's put it that
yes,
way.
yes, yes.
Right? Uh,
Yes. So, but like, but he did, I think, a good job. Like, he didn't bomb people. He didn't lead us into wars. He didn't make the
well, like I said,
world fall apart. Like, he
he
did
was
it okay.
definitely a good man. I mean, we
Yeah.
had the hostage crisis that happened during his time period, and it really was the threat of a more aggressive Ronald Reagan
Mhm.
that caused them to be released when they were.
Which
Um,
which hostage crisis was this?
so
Again, before my time. So,
The Iranian hostage
okay.
crisis. And
Okay.
so they had taken a bunch of American hostages, and Jimmy Carter actually tried to get them out. They even had some military incursions into Iran in order to try to get them, that failed. You know, that kind of thing was what was going on during that election cycle.
Okay.
And so it really did lead people to prefer Ronald Reagan because he was more hawkish, and I hate to say more authoritarian because I'm not happy with the type of authoritarian government we're really facing right now.
Yeah.
Reagan was a pussycat compared to what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
But there were reasons why Jimmy Carter wasn't a second term president. And some of it was the extreme inflation that we experienced during that time frame as well. And so, again,
Well, I
a
think we're going to
very
see,
good man.
but we've seen a lot of inflation lately.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's not necessarily,
Well, the president doesn't necessarily control
yeah,
the economy per se.
right.
There are certainly, as
They
we're
can
seeing,
impact it,
things that
certainly.
a president can do that impact it for sure on the negative side. And you got to give them some credit, you know, for maybe doing things that bolster business as well. But the problem for us now, of course, is that the type of support that the government is giving to the haves versus the have-nots is very out of balance.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes.
And so anyway, but that's a whole nother topic compared to
Yes.
whether or not our judiciary is going to keep our democracy intact.
Right, right.
Because right now it seems to be crumbling at an astonishing rate, even faster
Yeah.
than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
I mean, we're only 2 months in.
Yeah.
Only 2 months in.
It's been a very long 2 months, hasn't it?
It's been horrible.
Yeah.
And Congress has, because it is controlled by the MAGA party, and the Supreme Court level, it's a 6-3.
It's largely, yes, it's largely conservative.
Conservative judges to, yeah. But I will say that even at that level, there seems to be some attempts to rein Trump in. And I think he's kind of almost lost the support of some of those judges that he put into place.
Yes.
Because they are voting against him in a few instances.
Right.
So this is kind of, for me, our last ditch hope at reining Trump in, is that the courts will be able to do it. And right now it seems like they are making some steps in that direction.
Well, so yes,
And
they're definitely making some rulings, but so for example, when Trump wanted to deport the Venezuelans, and then they were told to stop the airplanes, and if they've already left, to turn them around, bring them back, and he
right,
just ignored it.
he did ignore it. Well, and
So
their excuse was that they were now over international waters where the courts had no jurisdiction.
right, right.
But at least one plane left
It's still, I don't
after
think
the
that's
ruling.
true though. Yes. Oh, really? I was unaware of
Yeah.
that.
Yes. Yeah.
So how will the courts do anything if Trump just ignores them? And
Well,
if
and that's the
the
question.
if the military and law enforcement are on Trump's side, which kind of he's putting people into positions where they kind of would be, but we're gonna have to, essentially this is gonna come down to our ordinary citizens going to start saying, no, I'm not going to do my job because it's wrong. Don't you think?
Yes, but well, to some degree I think that's true, but they're going to have the law on their side in that process as well. They're going to have judges that say, you're right, you cannot do that because it's illegal, or you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and he's definitely trying to rig the system in his favor with regard to who has these jurisdictions and who's loyal to him and who's not. And he's doing horrific things like threatening law firms that have done things that he disagreed with, right? And
Yeah,
he's put
yeah.
pressure on them. He's taken away things like their security clearances and that sort of thing. And prevented them from coming into certain federal properties.
Right.
And unfortunately, these law firms have buckled to that pressure.
I've
In
noticed
one
a lot
case,
of people seem to be buckling, and that's something that I really am unhappy about. Like a lot of these people who are in charge of these different departments are resigning, and they're just kind of like turning everything over when they resign. You should be there fighting things, being a
yeah.
thorn in their side instead of and throwing your hands up and saying, "Well, I'm going to resign out of conscience," and then well, but then you quit and you lost all power that you had to do anything.
Right. Well, and in a lot of cases, he's firing the people. And so then they have to go through the judicial system to say, was it legal to fire me?
Right. So it's
And in a
better to
lot
be
of
fired
cases,
and then
right,
have a court case about it than to resign and just to give up,
right. And
right?
in several cases, the judiciary has said, no, you cannot fire this person, reinstate them.
Yeah.
And so, and in with regard to not only leadership within these departments, but also some of the general personnel, right? People on
Mhm.
provisional
Yes.
personnel. So I think there's about
Right.
6 or so departments where they have been told rehire these people.
Right.
And so, and that's the judiciary that has made that happen.
Yeah.
So that's why I have at least a limited amount of hope that
Hmm.
it is the judiciary that's going to be able to turn this ship around, because right now it's still looking pretty scary. And there are those cases where it seems like he's bucking the decisions that have been made. Now, that said, Trump does listen to, I'll just say, Rupert Murdoch, right?
Hmm.
The New York Post, the Wall Street Journal.
Fox. It doesn't have Fox News. Isn't that Rupert
Um,
Murdoch as well? I thought it was.
yeah, yeah.
But Rupert
It's
Murdoch is Australian, isn't he?
yeah, I think so.
And so Donald
But he
Trump
runs
is
a lot.
listening to an
Well, he
Australian.
runs a lot of conservative media. He runs
Well,
a lot
yes,
of
I know he
conservative
does.
media in the United
Yes.
States. And he has basically said Trump should not buck the judiciary. And so Trump
Yeah.
is currently saying, I will not go against judgments, right,
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
judiciary. So at the
Yeah.
moment, he's claiming he will follow what these judges are saying. But in the
Yeah.
same breath, he calls for certain judges to be impeached,
Yes. Yes.
right? And rather
Heard
than
this.
going through the normal system of appeals, he
Hmm.
just starts bad mouthing these people and basically putting their lives at risk,
Yeah.
where they end up needing extra security and these kinds of
Yeah.
things. That alone
Yeah.
is so far outside of the norms of American democracy
Yeah.
that it's very concerning.
Yes. Yes. I read an article that was it was kind of providing some contrast as to how Trump is behaving and how Democrats have behaved in the past. So even when conservative judges rule against Democrats in a way that it's very painful for the Democrats, they've never really called for them to be impeached, right?
Right,
Yeah. So you just kind of you suck it up and you say, okay, well, this is how it is,
right.
and we'll try to get somebody better next time, right?
Yeah,
We'll get
yeah,
another judge. But
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and we were talking about people
Mm.
kowtowing to the pressures that he puts upon them. I mean, the pressure is real.
Yeah,
Columbia
sure.
University agreeing to his demands so that they didn't lose their federal funding was
Yeah.
just sickening for me,
Yeah.
because these institutions and universities fall under this, are so reliant on this funding that comes through the government that they're now being turned into political pawns.
I think a lot of people underestimate just how far they can go without assistance. Columbia University, I'm sure, would be just fine if they did not say, okay, well, we need this federal funding. They probably really don't.
Well, I think it was something like $400 million.
Okay, that's a lot of money.
That's
But you
a
know
lot
what?
of money.
They could get it done if they really wanted to, without the $400 million.
Well, I think they could as well, because they could fundraise, as universities always do, from other
Yeah.
sources. I would be more afraid at this point of losing students who have real issues with how the university has just responded to this authoritarian regime.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because
Sure.
if I
They'll
were a
lose.
student there,
Oh
I'd
yeah.
suddenly be looking for another school.
Sure. Yeah, you'd want to transfer. Or if you were
Yeah,
thinking of going there, you would probably say, well, okay, wait, maybe I'll just go to a different school instead.
right,
Yeah.
right,
So yeah, so they're going to lose a lot of tuition
right. But on
doing
the
this.
plus side, the the young man who was arrested or basically detained by ICE
All
from
right.
Colombia.
Right. The
Um,
Palestinian.
yes, the
Yeah.
Palestinian student
Mhm.
who had peaceful protest.
Right.
He's not accused of any crimes. Hasn't
Right.
he was here on a student visa, is married to an American citizen, has who's was at the time, and I'm assuming maybe she's still pregnant, but 8 months pregnant
Yeah.
with their child.
Right.
And they just scooped him up and took him to Louisiana,
Yeah.
with no due
Yeah.
process. Yet again, no due
Yeah.
process, much like the Venezuelans that they shipped off, no due
Yeah.
process. And these are the problems. And so, at the very least, the judiciary has forced them to bring him back from Louisiana. I think maybe New Jersey, I'll have to double check, is the state that they're now going to process him through.
Yeah.
So, there's little places where the judiciary seems to have a backbone, but I don't know how long it will last if the judges suddenly start getting removed from their seats
Well,
because,
so I think the third branch being the judiciary branch is probably the weakest branch in my opinion, just because well, I don't know. I guess they're all equally weak, except for the executive. Just simply because like they don't have boots on the ground, so to speak, right? They don't
right.
have people running around with guns enforcing their what they say. Like judges, they work with law enforcement, but they are not law enforcement.
Right. Well, in fact, it's the executive who is supposed to enforce their decisions. But if their
Yes.
decisions are against an executive who's willing to defy them,
Yes.
nothing is going to get enforced. And that is
No,
our
it
problem.
won't.
Now,
Yes, that is the problem.
theoretically, the US Marshals are typically the ones who enforce, and it doesn't typically have to go to the executive level for those
Mhm.
marshals to go to work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But this is a new situation.
Yeah.
And I don't yet know or see how that's going to occur if he does suddenly decide to defy these judicial orders. That
Yeah.
is, I mean, we've talked about being in a constitutional crisis, but that will be our largest constitutional crisis if he's suddenly defying judicial orders and there is nobody to enforce it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the problem. The executive branch clearly has too much power. They should not be in control of enforcement, in my opinion. What should it be in charge of? At the moment, I can't think of anything the executive branch should be doing. Like, what's the
Maybe we just
purpose of
don't
the
need an
executive
executive.
branch?
Maybe we
I think
just
we
need
don't. We just
Congress
need, yes, maybe a
and a
third branch
judiciary.
of a third house of Congress and a judiciary may be a better way to go about this or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, the Senate is a quite a mess itself. So I don't
Would
even know
any
if we need the
decisions get
Senate.
made? I don't know.
Oh,
But I have a problem with a nation being run by executive order as well.
yes, yes, no, it's terrible. This is not how it should be. But I guess he's voted in. So I mean, the problem is we just have a bunch of people making terrible votes. And then the whole
Well,
electoral college. I don't see any good solution with our current government. I don't know how our current government has functioned until
has
the point that we
lasted
are
as long as it has.
now. Yes, it's like it's not the worst system, I guess, because there's a lot worse governments in the world, but it needs a lot of work. We gotta
It
reorganize.
does.
Yeah.
It does. And I mean, it had potential.
Yes.
um, and there were certainly, we've been warned along the way for a long time about the potential of being exactly in the situation we're in right now.
Yeah.
And we haven't made any adjustments in order to prevent what's currently
Yeah.
happening.
No, we haven't.
one of the worst things I see is the push towards more anti-intellectualism, the
Yeah.
push away from education.
Right. Right.
I mean, and he has said out loud, our current standing president, that he likes the uneducated. They're his
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's for sure.
Uh, and so
I think.
and
mm,
pulling apart the Department of Education is just a piece of that,
oh yeah. Well,
right?
the education has always been the first thing cut, right? Whenever they're trying to trim the budget, education's the first one to get cut. Like military is the biggest boondoggle we have going on,
It
but
is.
it's never touched, and it
Right.
increases every year. And education always gets cut.
Yeah.
It's no wonder. I mean, it's by design, right?
Yeah.
They want
Yes.
an uneducated population so they can be easily controlled.
Right.
Yeah, it's terrible. And the whole government, as I've been kind of thinking and while listening to you at the same time, like the whole government is just kind of it's operating basically on this shared common belief that if we all do our part in the right way and we listen to one another when we're told that we can't do something or that we can, then it just kind of works. But at any moment, everyone can just suddenly say, "Well, I'm not going to listen to anyone, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do," and then it all falls apart,
Yeah.
right? If as soon as Trump decides that he's not going to listen to anyone, but people are still going to listen to him, then he can just
Right.
do whatever he wants, right?
Well, and the people still listening to him, that's the thing, because it's very clear now that his supporters stay within an information bubble
Yeah,
where they don't even hear topics or ideas or thoughts or concerns that are in opposition to that party line.
right. Not
And
seriously
so
considering them in any way.
no, and when they
Yeah,
do hear them, it's so contrary to their belief system that's now been ingrained in them, the
yeah,
propaganda that they've been saturated in,
yeah,
that they just reject it out of hand as, being lies.
yeah,
In their
yeah,
minds, it's all lies
yeah,
because it doesn't conform to what they've come to believe.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I don't know how to break that system. I can't tell my neighbors to stop
Education.
watching Fox News.
It's
Well,
education.
exactly. Of course it is.
Yeah,
And it's I would say more than anything in the world right now, we need an education in discernment around media
critical
sources.
thinking. Critical thinking.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly that.
exactly.
Um, but so much comes at us through media now
Yeah,
that being able to assess your sources of media is is critical
yeah,
to being able to discern what's
yeah,
really going on in the world.
yeah,
And like I said, I can't tell my neighbors to stop watching Fox News. It's the highest rated news source. I say news,
yes,
but they call themselves an entertainment station, right?
yeah,
Because they've gotten into
yeah,
trouble for
yeah,
lying.
yeah,
They've had to pay millions of dollars in fines for the
yeah,
lies that they've spread. And
yeah.
so their defense is, well, they know that these people are just here as entertainers.
Right,
We don't claim that these programs are news.
right. Yes. Well, they have very few actual news programs on Fox News.
Right. Right.
I'm surprised it's still called Fox News. It should just be the Fox Entertainment Network,
Right. They'd get
right?
into a lot less legal problems if they did that.
Yeah, yeah, probably
but it
so.
wouldn't but it wouldn't change their viewership,
Hmm.
and that's the problem.
No, it wouldn't.
And so if you've got people sealed into a propaganda bubble, then how do you get a different viewpoint in front of them? And I don't know if that's going to improve with time and the situation we find ourselves in. It's bad, John.
Yes, it is bad. And I
um,
read this stuff and I think about all these different things and it's a big
well,
mess.
I listen a lot to a gentleman called Robert Reich. I think is how you pronounce his last
Yes,
name.
yes,
He
yes,
was a
yes,
former
yes.
labor
Yeah,
head of the labor department under Clinton, and
yeah,
he's been a university professor and that sort of thing. And
yeah.
and he basically talks. I'm not going to say it right, but something about uh, reasons to be. What is? How does he say it? Nauseously optimistic.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's a really good description. I'm very nauseously optimistic that the
Yeah.
judiciary might be the last holdout against pure authoritarian autocracy of this current
Well,
regime.
hopefully the midterms will kind of swing Congress back a little bit more towards the center,
I'm
which
hoping
the American center is not very central, but
no.
from where we are right now, I hope just for a slight swing back towards the center. Even though I tend to be more leftist, but I like Robert Reich a lot. I have agreed with a lot of the things that he said. There's been a couple of things where I was like, yeah, you're not going far enough, but he's a bit of a centrist, I think. Um, but he's a smart guy and he's got a lot of good ideas, that's for sure. But yeah, what would it take to kind of to fix this? So why does he say there's reasons to be nauseously optimistic or whatever
Well,
that saying
mostly
is?
it is around the judiciary as well.
Oh yeah,
He's listed some of the places where Trump has lost these lawsuits that have come before the judiciary, and he's taking all of this quite seriously. He seems to be more disturbed than a lot of people who are openly out in the media
yeah.
discussing these things. And see, and you say he's centrist. I find him to be quite progressive. I find him
In
to be
some
more of a
ways,
Bernie
I think he
Sanders
is.
AOC type.
Oh yes, 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 yes. I would agree. But Bernie Sanders is even kind of centrist. I mean, I'm thinking from like an international perspective right now.
Okay, okay,
Like,
that's that may be
the,
true.
yes, the American
Even American liberals
scale
are very
is
centrist compared to much of the rest of the
yes,
world,
yes,
other
yes,
parts of the world. Yeah,
yes. Well, he's not a communist, right? He's not a.
no, by
If he's
far, no.
any sort of a socialist, it's very democratic socialist, which is fine.
Right,
That's more or less what I
right.
see myself as being as well. So yeah, I think he's still, globally speaking, a bit of a centrist, but because I sometimes I want him to go a little bit more to the left, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but yes, he's definitely an American progressive, I would say, yes.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. Is a prayer, or wing in a prayer that the
Yeah,
judiciary might be the thing that Trump will still pay attention to and still allow to rein him in. But
yeah.
his attacks on law firms
Mhm.
and on his rhetoric when a judge does something he doesn't like, that in my mind puts those judges' lives at risk, is still a big problem with what we're dealing with in the United States.
Yeah, well, so
So
this is the United States that we're talking about. So these judges need to buy some guns and get their concealed carry permit, right? It should be easy for them. And just ignore whatever Trump says. If he's going to ignore what they say, do the same thing. Whatever Trump says, ignore it. Stick to your guns, both
literally.
figuratively and literally.
Well, and the judge that did the decision about the Venezuelans,
Mhm.
of course, Trump called him a radical liberal and called for his
Yeah,
impeachment, but he's a conservative judge.
yeah.
He's he's the one that
Well, see, I didn't know
kept,
that, but I'm not
yes,
surprised.
he's the one that called for the release of Hillary Clinton's emails. He's the
Oh
one that
yeah.
prevented Trump's taxes from being released.
Oh
So
boy.
he's a conservative judge, but he's done
Yeah.
something that Trump doesn't like. And now he's suddenly
Right.
a radical liberal that needs to be impeached.
Of course. Yeah. Well, Trump has no foot in reality at all.
Right.
He's just he spouts off whatever he wants to say, and that becomes his reality. And he truly represents, he embodies the concept of it's not a lie if you actually believe it, right?
Yeah.
This is Trump in a nutshell. It's not a lie
Hmm.
if he actually believes it, and he believes all of his lies. I'm sure
Yeah.
that he does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel the same. I think he believes what he says.
Yeah.
But the problem is what he believes.
Yeah.
All right, John. Well, thank you again for an interesting conversation. We will keep
Yeah.
a close
Sorry, I didn't
eye.
have any
And
more better things to say about
well,
it.
no,
It's-
that's okay. I will just keep a close eye on the judiciary and see if they retain their backbone.
yeah.
He's won in a few cases, but he's lost in more cases than he's won. And
Right.
so my hope is that that will be our road to salvation.
Yeah. I hope so.
Till next
I
time.
hope so.
Me
All
too.
right.
Me too. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.